All right, welcome to, I think, our second episode, because our previously second episode had technical difficulties.
Yeah, I suppose we should offer an explanation to our audience.
Well, they don't know is, a third episode. There's no regular schedule yet, but it's okay. Feel free to share.
So we recorded a full episode, and the topic of that was we were discussing The Man Who Folded Himself and the movie, that was a book, The Man Who Folded Himself, and a movie, Predestination. And both those stories had very similar plot lines, although we didn't know it before we had decided to talk about it. But they both dealt with time travel, and they had a main character who went back in time and met a previous version of himself, and through a series of events became his own father in both stories.
Yeah, that's a strange part that we didn't know each other's content or recommendation, but turns out to be that way.
Yeah, so I was wondering if you meet a previous version of yourself through time travel, if it's necessarily the case that you will become your own father.
No.
No?
Yeah. No,
Have you thought that through, though, or are you just?
Well, I've seen other stories or been exposed to other time travel content that doesn't necessarily cover that. They go elsewhere with other things.
Right, but
yeah.
that might not be the definitive word on, whether that's the reality of time travel.
Yeah. But that can go to the next episode. I think we're the fascination of the coincidence of the two similar plot lines in our consumption of both the movie and the book is unique.
That's why I think it might be true that two different sources arrived at the same conclusion. Although we don't know if one was based on the other or not. So.
Yeah. But today's episode is about Star Wars. Would you say your favorite science fiction content out there?
That's a hard question to answer because it certainly was a very important influence on me when I was young. Mm-hmm. Those first three movies that came out in the 70s and 80s. And then I was definitely excited to see the newer movies that came out, but was largely disappointed by them, both the prequels and the sequel series. But I've taken notes, so we can go through. Should we go through each movie in sequence?
Well, let's go through as far as why do you like it more as a story, you think, than other stuff that you have come across. You think it's partially your age when you were exposed to Star Wars, or why do you like it more than anything else? Do you own more I can never say that word.
Memorabilia?
Yes. Memorabilia. Do you own more?
When I was a kid, I had a ton of those. You still there?
Yeah.
Okay. When I was a kid, I had a bunch of the action figures. Mm-hmm. I used to love those. And I remember collecting trading cards. I don't have any of those anymore. I don't know where they all went, but they're no longer in my life.
Yeah. But when you did, do you have more of that than anything else compared to any?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you say that of all the things like toys, action figure, action cards, Star Wars comprise of the most of the things that you in your collection, like, compared to anything else.
I guess you could say that, although I don't know that is informative, because they certainly made more of that than any other science fiction program or movie or
not necessarily. Well, there's a lot of action figures and collecting cards out there, and I can tell you, I own none. I own comic books that are graphic novels.
Hmm.
So I own, I think maybe two or three uh, DC comic graphic novels, but I don't own actual Star Wars toys, so to speak. Or
And to be clear, neither do I anymore.
no, it's okay. They have festivals, they have conventions, all that stuff, and I would say, growing up, um, I'm not exposed to Star Wars as much as everybody else, so I think my fascination or concept of like science fiction started with the general stuff, which is movies and books and stuff like that. Nothing like focusing on Star Wars. So Star Wars is in the bigger collective of things I like as far as movies and stuff. But compare that to Star Trek, for example, people used to go binary, right? Like, are you a Trekkie or do you like Star Wars? Um, with your previous experience as a kid and growing up, and it's not necessarily binary. They don't have to exclude each other, but thinking about all the stuff you did own and also the fascination and how much you like one topic to another, would you say you're more of a Star Wars expert than how much you know about Star Trek?
No, I would not say that.
Mm,
I was a pretty big. I still am a big fan of Star Trek as well.
mm,
Um, the original series I certainly remember watching as a kid, and that was certainly a presence in my life. But I would say the Next Generation is what really captured my imagination, particularly towards the final seasons of
mm,
that show. Um, I really wasn't that impressed with most of the movies. I love The Wrath of Khan. I thought that was a great movie. That was awesome. And probably that's responsible for reigniting interest in Star Trek, so, which then led to The Next Generation. That's my theory. I don't know if
mm,
that's true. But all the other movies sort of disappointed me
mm,
in one way or another. But what was cool about Star Wars, if to get back on that subject, at the time that the first movie, A New Hope, came out, it was just called Star Wars when it first came out. But it was such a cut above other science fiction movies at that point,
mm.
in terms of special effects and just appearing real, and a compelling storyline. I would, if I look at other science fiction movies that came out around that time in the 70s, they were also sterile and fake looking. The one notable exception to that is 2001: A Space Odyssey. That was, I think that came out in the 60s.
Mm,
And the special effects in that were realistic, certainly for the time, but
yeah.
still hold up, I think. Although that was very sterile as well.
Mm,
The characters are very serious. Everything's very clean, and
yeah.
you know. Whereas in Star Wars, it was, and this is said quite a bit, that the universe was very lived in. The ships that they rode around in were dirty and dented, and
Yep.
you know,
He did a really
and
good job building a world. And I think you get that when you watch it. And I think for its time, when you compare with other cinematics or anything else, it's definitely broke the mold. So
yeah,
let's go with things you like. So yeah, definitely impact and visual. Today
visual.
we call it graphics and computer, but I think it was very, very advanced and did a lot of breakthroughs with the movies.
And there was also George Lucas based the plot heavily upon Joseph Campbell's hero's journey.
Yes. Yes.
Almost literally. There's various plot points in the hero's journey, and he seems to hit them all beat for beat.
Mm.
The main character, the hero, starts out in the ordinary world. That's Luke on Tatooine as a farm boy, and he wants, he's sort of dissatisfied with his life.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's something that happens that creates a call to adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And he meets his mentor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then Obi-Wan issues a call to adventure, come with me, I need your help. And Luke's like, no, I can't do it. So there's the refusal of the call. But then the stormtroopers kill his parents. So now he's like, all his ties to his ordinary world have been severed, and he's free to leave on his adventure. And so he crosses the first threshold, and, there's all these different plot points that the hero's journey outlines, and George Lucas, pretty much based the script of Episode 4 just directly on the hero's journey, and he did a good job because the characters were relatable. At least speaking for myself, you rooted for Luke. There was emotional impact when notable characters died.
Yeah.
It was written in a way that drew the audience in and invested them in the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I thought.
Yep.
Now, for all those reasons for me to like those original 3 movies, the inverse is true with the prequels and the sequel movies.
Yep. So you want to go to your list of things you don't like? It seems like a lot of, it's very, it is what it is, and it's going to be with us for a long time. But, fans definitely have their emotional tie, because I think the impact that it made in the 70s is so strong that people feel like they own and participate with the content, that it's just, with anything else too, but particularly with Star Wars, I think the long gap between all the different sequel and prequels make people even more frustrated when it doesn't checks off all their points that they wishing or wanting to see in the stories. So and there was a little bit of denial too on my part when the prequels came out, because the first 3 movies were so important to me as a kid and so amazing that I didn't want to believe that the Phantom Menace was as bad as it was. I kept looking for ways to justify it in my head that it was actually good, and it was kind of a long process to come to the truth of the situation that it wasn't. And so I had to do a lot of soul searching. Let's go to the 90s prequels, right? Which is what you're referring to, the Phantom Menace. I don't know the titles of all the movies, but covers Luke's father, which is Anakin Skywalker. So let's go to that and talk about the points that you don't like about them.
Yeah. So first, before we do that, I just want to say, from a very high level, I think this series is epic. The prequels hold up in that level. Like, I think if you look at the overarching story arc and the ideas that were attempted to achieve, it was good on that level, but just the details were horrible. So let's get into some of those details.
Yep.
The kid that played Anakin Skywalker in Phantom Menace was just annoying. you know, there were so many. The dialogue was horrible, and his acting was horrible. And so one thing that the original Star Wars movies had that was good was it was sort of Shakespearean in the dialogue. You know, some of it was cheesy, but for the most part, it worked. You know, there was like a serious tone to the language and sort of a formality to it.
Mm-hmm.
And in the prequels, that was sort of not adhered to. For instance, there was one scene where Jake Lloyd, who was the actor who played Anakin in the first movie, he was flying a ship, and he was like, "I can do a spin. That's a good trick," And it just it just was like douche chill inducing. It was like, no, you should not have said that.
It's immersion breaking. That's what they call it. So it breaks you out of the universe because the character doesn't talk like he's belong in that world where everyone should talk a certain way. I didn't catch that. I just catch the and now coming as a non-Star Wars fan, like, obviously I was exposed to some of it, but not like exposed to sadly, I never watched the original series throughout. Like just sat down and watched all of it. I just, watch bit and pieces through either media or other venues, and then I'll just consume it because I just understand kind of like the basic plot. But yeah, it never made that same impact on me versus other people or that generation when it was a big deal or they're a big fan of the original. So coming into it, I had a fresh take, but I did see the bad acting, and I could never relate to the kid actor, right? Like same as your critique. I just didn't feel like I should care. And not that I care much more, but I can understand. It's just like there's no drive for me to stick with him at all. The whole time experiencing it, I was like, can we just move forward where he becomes like a teenager or whatever? Because I don't care. Like I have no invested emotion into his storyline. I think that was a big miss. I don't know. Now George wrote the sequels, right? Like the prequels, the 90s one. So he actually wrote that. Okay. So maybe there was I don't know, bad acting or bad directing, but it was all his creation. Where do you think where do you think the gap was in regards to that character? Was it the writing or the acting, or like how would you change it to make him be more relatable, so to speak?
So, well, the dialogue definitely needed to be improved. There were several points in the movie where I would cringe because it's like, no, you shouldn't have said that. That's horrible. So the dialogue definitely needed to be improved. Are you familiar with Red Letter Media?
Yes and no. I've heard the term. I forgot what it was. Can you remind?
They put out YouTube videos where they review movies, and they did like a multi-part analysis of The Phantom Menace. It's really brilliant how they break it apart and point out all the things that don't work. So to our audience and to you, I would recommend checking that out because it's funny too, the way they.
Yeah, I watch a lot of honest trailers, and the same people that make honest trailers make a lot of other movies reviews as well. So I watch a lot of other YouTubers like deep dive into Star Wars, but also other movies I care about, kind of just poke holes at it. And there's like YouTubers who are in Los Angeles that write screenplays and stuff, and they do reviews of like all this stuff too. So yes and no. I've heard of them, but I haven't watched some of their content. So
okay, well, just a recommendation. So So overall, I would give The Phantom Menace a C minus if I were to grade it. And I have a list of things that I didn't like about it. So I'll just. So there's the dialogue that's bad.
Mm-hmm.
Jar Jar Binks was annoying.
Yeah. Do you
and the whole Gungan underwater city just seemed weird. Just didn't seem like it belonged in Star Wars, and I'm not sure exactly why that is, but it just didn't seem to work for me. The idea that the Force was related to metachlorines in the blood was just annoying too, because the whole great thing about the Force was that it was this mystical thing. And the brilliance of the original Star Wars movies was that they sort of wedded science fiction and mysticism together in such a satisfying way. And to attribute the Force to some physical property of the blood, George Lucas should have known better. Like that. Yeah. That totally goes against what he built in the first three movies. The fact that Anakin Skywalker built C-3PO to help his mother around the house, that didn't make any sense at all and was stupid. His mother was annoying. I don't know who that actress is, but she had a very flat affect, and there was nothing really compelling about her. There were a bunch of CGI cute characters mixed in that were annoying to me. Don't go cute in Star Wars. That's not.
How long is your list? Because I want to dive deeper into some of these, so we can cover them real quick as you list through, and let's pick like top three. But keep going.
And just the other thing. I've already kind of touched on this. The large plot I thought was interesting. The small plot was disjointed and didn't make much sense, and the dialogue was bad. So, I mean, those are my main points of. And those are big points. I mean, it ruined the movie. So.
I think cute characters. I think I know why. I mean, I know why commercially, because you gotta sell products and merchandise, right? But other than Jar Jar Binks. What I kind of don't remember, Star Wars in depth as much as you. What were like definitely like the modern one, the one that just came out? I can definitely tell which one was like that's just there for product placement to sell some stuff. But
they can sell the cool stuff. I mean,
right?
Why do you need cute stuff to sell?
During the '90s series, which stand out to you that you kind of remember like immediately?
There were just some throwaway characters. They weren't really main. They were just like sort of background. But in particular, there was like this two-headed, very obviously CGI creature that was the announcer at the pod race scene, and it just was so out of place and so annoying and so was put there for comedic effect. But Star Wars, you shouldn't have that type of comedic effect. Just seems very out of place in Star Wars. If we are using the first three movies as the model.
Which leads to Jar Jar Binks. Even as a non-Star Wars person, Jar Jar Binks I find him annoying throughout because there was just so much of him. I couldn't come away thinking, have mixed feelings about the movie, because even as a non-fan, I was just like, what is going on? Where is this movie going? And which should I care about? Because they're not short movies, they're not like an hour and a half. They're quite extended. And if you're not in this universe, you're kind of like, hey man, just give me a quick recap. Like, I don't need to know everything, but I need to know a little bit, right? And coming to it, it's just like, what's going on? And the cast is huge. I mean, you know who the main character is, but as a non-Star Wars fan, I think he went too far in depth on so many different things that I got lost, and I just was not invested, like I said with with Anakin. But Jar Jar Binks drove a.
I'm sorry.
No.
It didn't follow a standard plot line,
Mm,
The Phantom Menace. I mean, if we're going to say Anakin Skywalker was the main character of the first movie, and the red letter media people point this out, he doesn't appear in the movie until 45 minutes in.
yeah.
And it's tough to invest yourself in the main character if he doesn't appear until the second act, basically.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't even remember that. But yeah, as far as characters or hero's journey, he doesn't really have like a primary driver. Not that I can remember it. Like nothing happens with his mom. Like there's no conflict. And maybe that's why there was such a hard reaction to it, because he just, if I remember correctly, essentially recruited and then go through the motion of becoming a Jedi, and that was it. Like there's nothing else happened other than him like, oh, I don't want to leave because I'm a baby. But
and that wasn't really, there was not a lot of emphasis on that. I mean, he sort of was sad to leave his mom, but that wasn't like there was not really a lot at stake there.
I think
he's like, I don't want to leave you, Mom. And then they're like, well, come with us anyway. And he's like, okay. And so
there was no impacting driving motion for that. Yeah, it was just nothing. And I think that's why people like me and definitely, for Star Wars fan, they were just like, what? And definitely hate it or feel anger about it.
There were some good parts. I thought the character Darth Maul was interesting, and I thought the Senator Palpatine, the actor who played him, and the idea that he was sort of manipulating things behind the scenes, that was all interesting, but there was just not I don't know what they should have done, but that was the interesting part, and the lightsaber battle I thought was good. So like those were the good parts of the movie, and the other 95% of it was annoying, and it's just not a recipe for a good movie.
Yeah, take me through the just a short version of the Star Wars timeline, because I had trouble kind of piecing pieces of information together, and I guess I could read into it, but it's so dense, it's so much that I never really understood, because originally, and let's go with Anakin's timeline, the Republic is the good side, right? That's what they call themselves, the Republic. Okay, so that's the Republic has its forces, and the Jedi's on that side. Cut through,
but it was corrupt.
Correct. So cut through Luke Skywalker's timeline. The Resistance is what's called the good guys, right? Or what do they call themselves?
Okay. So in the prequel movies, it basically follows the fall of the Republic, the rise of Palpatine, the Emperor, and throughout that, the fall of the Jedi at the end, and the transformation of Anakin into Darth Vader.
Right.
So those are the three main things going on in the prequels. In the original movies, it was basically the Empire's been around for a while, but not that long.
So the Republic becomes the Empire. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. So,
yeah.
But they call themselves the Empire at Luke's timeline. They never. Okay.
Yeah, and that Senator Palpatine becomes the Emperor.
Okay, fair enough. And then it stay that way, right? Throughout, like even the latest movies, it's still the Empire, for lack of a better term.
Okay, so episodes 4, 5, and 6, which were the original movies, it's the Empire as we know it, and it charts the rebellion's fight against the Empire and the Empire's fall at the end of the third movie. And then in the sequel movies, it's weird. it's not the Empire that's back, but it's like a new version of the Empire, and it's called the First Order.
Right.
And apparently, the First Order decimates the New Republic that existed between Return of the Jedi and Episode 7, which was The Force Awakens.
Right.
Which I thought was a bad choice. I mean, I don't know if we want to go through these in order, but I could discuss.
Well, we can go with high levels plot lines, because as an just assuming there's other people who are not big into Star Wars, it was the Republic, and then it was the Empire. The Empire fell, and now it became the First Order. What I don't understand is, once the Empire fell, how did the good guys start losing again? Which I don't get, because it never kind of explained, right. And the timeline was so much of a gap, I guess. That I just like, if you have already struck the Empire, you kill the Emperor, the good guys should stay strong the entire time. And so I never get how the First Order essentially rose again. From where? Like, where did they even recruit people? I don't get that entire thing. And as a non-Star Wars person, I'm like, where am I supposed to pick up the pieces? Like, you're not giving me anything, right? Going with the movies alone, right? No comic books, no cartoons, right. no other canon material. I should be, as just a regular moviegoer, be provided with this information inside. And the rolling scripts at the beginning, which is like, a Star Wars thing, is cool. But you can't expect me to kind of just like catch up within like 30 seconds of like knowing what's going on, which I never do, because I'm just like, I'm just going to go here and watch the movie and that's it, right? I just take it at face value. So I never got that. I'm like, how did they lose again? So maybe you can help me piece the Star Wars series together. Yeah,
well, I agree with you on that point. It's explained, but it's explained in the extended universe. So there's like a bunch of books and there's other things. But I agree that the sequel movies, episodes 7, 8, and 9, it would have been more satisfying if it took place within the world of the New Republic. But for some reason, they chose to start those 3 movies at the point at which the New Republic is
failing or failed already.
Well, it's wiped out by the New Order. There's like Star Killer base, and they shoot the new
laser.
I'm sorry, the first order. Yeah, they shoot a laser at the New Republic's capital planet.
Okay.
And destroy it.
Right.
And that happens in episode 7.
Okay, got it.
But it was like all that work of the original movies was lost, because the Empire was replaced by something that pretty much looked like the Empire, and
right, which is a non-Star
non-Star
Wars person. I was like, what? Like, they did all this work, and then I just come into this universe again, and it's back to square one. I'm like, what happened? Like, why are you not covering the information? Because I'm so lost now. Yeah. That I just immediately almost kind of, my first reaction is like, no, I don't accept this, because you never explained it to me. So I think that was the big
and so I can understand that coming from a person, who's not as steeped in Star Wars as I am.
Yep.
But also from someone who is steeped in Star Wars, it's not satisfying either. It was stupid for them to do that.
Yep.
I certainly would not have made that choice.
Yep.
There are other failings of the sequel movies. I guess we can go into that.
Yes, let's do that.
The main failing, I thought, was that none of the characters were relatable or like, I didn't care what happened to any of the characters.
I think, yes, I agree with you. I think the only one that I feel the most as if the plot, goes to the hero's journey a little bit more was Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
he
Oh,
actually
yeah.
has clear conflict, and even though he was like portrayed as the bad guy, I was like more intrigued as like what happened to him, and they cover that
Mhm.
in I guess episode 8 a little bit, but it wasn't enough. I was like, how they explained to him turning the dark side. Same thing with I guess 1, 2, and 3. How Anakin kind of slowly drift onto the dark side wasn't enough for me because I was like,
Yeah.
that's it. Like the reason you want to do this is because of that. It just so seems so like what? Like no. From everything that you know, as a character, why would you do it? It doesn't make any sense. It's not enough for me to you know, and I guess the characters kind of reflect each other because he kind of repeat the hero's journey for each of them. With
Mhm.
Anakin, it was you know kind of saving his wife, who was dying.
It didn't seem compelling enough
No, yeah, because I
to
don't know.
warrant what he did.
Was she getting sick? I don't remember now. I don't know why
So,
she was dying.
okay, so the plot line that George Lucas wrote was that Anakin's mother died, and that was traumatic for him.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't well acted or well written, and so that motivation, although it existed, you know, within the framework of the movie, the audience didn't really buy into it.
It got buried. Yeah.
But that motivation was there, and then so then he's in love with Padme, who I guess parallels his mother in some way, and he has a dream that she dies in childbirth.
Yeah.
And so I guess the motivation was, you know, he doesn't want, he's in love with Padme and doesn't want her to die. But there's also a deeper level in that, you know, he experienced the death of his mother, and you know he wanted to prevent all that. So on paper that makes sense and could have worked had it been written well, but it just wasn't written well. And you know, there's no substitute for good writing, and
Yep.
you know, so on a very high level it works, but in the actual viewing of the movie it doesn't work very well.
Now we take that arc and we apply it to Kylo Ren's. Can you remind or inform us as to why he chose the dark side? Because for me, as a non Star Wars fan, it was only one action, and it's the same kind of like premonition. You know, once you work with all the forces, you kind of see the future, for lack of a better term. And so he kind of predicted Luke was gonna go kill him or off him for lack of a term. Is that the impetus for him to switch? I kind of don't get why he would switch.
Okay, and I don't either, but I think what the writers of those 3 movies were going for, and you know, it wasn't George Lucas this time, but so when the New Republic was still around, Luke was also trying to resurrect the Jedi Order. So he recruited some people, some young Force-sensitive people, to be new Jedi, and Kylo Ren, or I guess his name was Ben Solo at that point, was one of them.
Yep.
And so he started to train Ben Solo, and yeah, at some point Luke had a premonition that Ben Solo would turn to the dark side, and so he wanted to stop that from happening, and so he attacked Ben Solo, and then Ben Solo didn't like that.
Which makes sense. Yeah, which makes sense on paper. Yeah.
And also in the background, Snoke, which is a weird name for a villain, but anyway, Snoke, you know, was the new Dark Lord and was recruiting him in some way in the background, although that was never touched upon.
Yeah, was that even shown in the movies?
That was never shown.
Okay.
And maybe the way it happened was that Luke, or you know, when Luke attacked Ben sort of left Luke, and then at that point Snoke moved in.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Because I also felt lost for that twist, right? Or not twist, but that arc. I just didn't get it. I'm like, what happened again? Because I'm coming in blank, fresh every time. I'm not gonna do any research or care enough to like read any comic books. So if you just take the movie as canon and no other source of information, which most people would like go online and read and discuss and kind of dive deeper. But as a non-Star Wars, I'm like, I'm not gonna do all that work. Like I'm just not. I'm not invested in that. So
no, and I once tried to read one of those novels because I had this like, what happened in between the original movies and the sequel series? There was some series of events that happened.
Yep.
And there's novels that address that. But I tried to read one, and it was just horrible. And I was like, I'm not spending my time reading this. It's horrible.
Yeah, I think so. That's a lot of like stories arc that is just not covered enough, because that's where people care as to the why. And if you don't give me a big enough reason or give me a big drive early enough, I lose connection to the character. And I think that was such a big. As to the new set of characters, the 7, 8, 9, I just whatever, man. It's just like another random reason to go fight, and I'm like, what happened? Why are you fighting again? It's literally the same empire that you already defeated. Where did they gather the resources to build another like Death Star in the middle of space with no one knowing? And it just boggles my mind, because I come in, as as this.
Well, space is a big area.
Yep. I come in as this like, troubleshooting mindset. I'm like, what? No, I don't accept this, because how do they do all this and get to where they are? It seems like once the good guy wins, it's just like, it's all good now. I'm just going to go on vacation permanently and never do any countermeasures. It's like, hey, let's put all these policies in place so we don't have another Death Star. And it's just like, I guess you learn nothing. And it's just like, looks like another fail from Epic, systematic fail from everyone on top, including the Jedi. I'm like, you spent all this time defeating this Dark Force, and you did, by the way, which was a big celebration. And then everybody just go to sleep at the wheel, and I just could not deal with that. So, the 7, 8, 9, let's go with the stuff you do like. If there's even, did you even make a list for that?
I did, yeah.
Okay, let's go with what you like.
I have a list for each movie.
Let's go with 7. So that was what's her face? Rey.
The Force Awakens.
The Force Awakens. Rey. I don't even know her last name, but it just.
I don't think she has a last name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's go with the good stuff that you like about that movie.
Well, there's more bad stuff than good. I thought Kylo Ren was the most compelling character, definitely. But that, sort of emphasizes the bad point that all the other characters there was nothing to sort of like about them or be interested in. There were a lot of unnecessary characters, too.
Yes.
Like, there was one character, Maz Kanata, who for some reason had Luke's lightsaber.
Is that the little alien old lady?
Yeah.
Yes. That was such a big point for me. 'Cause I'm like, who is she? I've never been exposed to her before. And somehow she's the most trusted person, like in the resistance or rebellion, whatever you want to call them. I'm like, what? Who is she? Like, I have no idea who she is. But how did she come to, like, in your theory, how did she come to hold or store Luke Skywalker's saber? What was your theory on that?
I don't know. I don't have a theory. I don't know how she got it.
And in regards to her background, like, she just another sage sitting around. Like, what do you think her background character is?
Apparently, Han Solo knew her, which could make sense. He's sort of a rogue and goes from place to place and meets lots of different people. So I can buy that. But they never did anything with her in the 3 sequel movies. And it seemed like she was a main character, certainly in the first movie, or she played an important role. But they never even did anything with that. And I think part of that is probably the fault of having another writer write the middle movie.
Yes.
And but
That is such
they
a
shouldn't
mess.
have done that. They shouldn't have done that. and Captain Phasma.
Yes.
That was another main character that didn't go anywhere.
Correct. Yeah. That was a letdown.
So those are, I put those in the category of unnecessary new characters. Certainly those two. Because there's enough other characters as well.
Yeah.
I mean, already. And there's, hammer out those. The cool, here's a good part of the sequel movies is to see the actors from the original movies.
Yeah.
So Han Solo, Princess Leia, and Luke, like those were all really cool parts, But it seemed like they wanted to focus more on the new people, but they weren't compelling at all. So I didn't care. I wanted to see the old people, because those were real characters that had been developed well.
Yeah.
And so I cared about them. But I didn't care about the new characters. And the characters within the First Order, the General Hux,
Yes.
and Snoke. Snoke was interesting, but they didn't do much with him either. And General Hux was sort of a comical villain. And if you want the audience to be afraid of the villains, don't make them comical. Like, why would you do that?
Comparing him to the originals, who do you think? So the original character, there was a general, and they made him a CGI. He's basically like a sub.
Grand Moff Tarkin.
Yeah, he was really tall.
Yeah.
And so, was General Hux supposed to be kind of like another model of that guy? Because, yeah, I mean, I guess in the original Star Wars, other than the Emperor, there was all these like lieutenants walking around, pretty badass too. You'd be like, oh crap, it's that guy. I need to run. But
yeah, they were serious and they were menacing and they were evil.
Would you say that Hux is supposed to be kind of modeled after that because he's a new lieutenant running around, being badass?
I think so, but they made him comical, which totally undermines that whole.
Yeah. Not only did he get his ass beat around by the good guys, he also get his ass beat around by Kylo Ren, which then I feel bad for him because I'm like, oh, dude, your job sucks because nobody likes you.
Nobody likes you.
Yeah.
But apparently you rose to a high level somehow.
I just like, Yeah, I feel ambivalent about it. Yeah.
Here's another issue I had. I never got a sense for what it was like to live under the government of the First Order. The whole story revolved around, the highest level of executive control, like, the generals, the whatever Snoke was, supreme leader. But there were no like citizens. There was, and I don't know, in the original Star Wars movies, that was another point that made it compelling. You sort of got Luke was a general citizen, was an average citizen living under the Empire. So you got a sense, it was a real world. In the sequel movies, there were no average citizen characters. So it didn't feel like a real world in that way.
I think they try with Rey being an orphan, but immediately she becomes a hero and have all these amazing skills, which I'm like, what? How do you even know how to fly? Like,
yeah, I mean,
I think
there were a lot of good. There were some good ideas that they could have developed and could have made interesting, but they just did it all wrong.
Now, bringing that back to the original, how did Luke learn how to fly? Because I don't remember him being trained either. I mean, I remember him being trained with the Force and being badass with a lightsaber, but as far as being a badass starship pilot, which he was mirroring his dad, right? He was, because that covers with the Anakin's arc. You can kind of see him as a little kid winning that pod race. I'm like, oh, he's kind of badass already. He has all these engineering skills. Whether you agree with it or not, he built all these droids. He was kind of like know how to deal with all that stuff. But whereas Luke, I never got that sense and I only watched like the series once. I couldn't watch it twice. It was the pacing was kind of slow for me, coming from like a modern movie perspective. But did they cover that in all of his training, like how he kind of fly around?
That's a good point. I don't know. I think
But you being as a
he probably learned in between the first between A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back, I would imagine.
do you put that?
No, because he destroyed the Death Star in an X-wing.
So you
in the first movie.
you associate him with that characteristic as well, right? That's another thing he's also good at, flying his spaceship and space fighting.
Yeah.
And you don't doubt or you just accept it, right? Because that's another thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you accept that in the Rey Skywalker arc line, as far as her flying abilities?
No. Yeah, she was able to fly the Millennium Falcon in the first movie, and that was like, how do you know how to do that?
Yeah, and I think that's to me that's another taking as face value, action adventure aside, which is what Lucas George does really good, because I love all the quick action adventure sequences where they're like they gotta run essentially. And I think he co-wrote or participated in Indiana Jones series as well with Steven Spielberg. So if you watch any of those, you have this feel. I don't know how to describe it, but they are really good in doing action adventure, which is borderline PG-13 to rated R stuff where it's fun, and I like that a lot. Right? I think to this day, I love the Indiana Jones series because it's funny and it's quick and has all this awesome characters, and you take that and you apply it to the new.
And you know what's going on the whole time.
Yeah, you take that and you apply it to the new Star Wars, which you want to capture that sense. I think they do a good job with the action adventure, but the whole time is immersion breaking, because she's an orphan collecting parts on this planet, which I'm like, oh yeah, your life sucks. You want to leave. I totally agree. But how do you know how to fly so good? Like so good. Not just regular good. Like super good.
Right.
Just like it.
And she lives on a desert planet. So you're like, oh, you're bringing it back to the original Tatooine. No, it's a different desert planet.
Yeah. Which is fine. I mean, I kind of understand why they did certain things. But at the same time, it's immersion breaking for me. I don't care about the desert planet. I care that all of a sudden she's running around getting shot at for protecting a droid, which, okay, it's fine. I would think you would give up that droid. But I guess that's the twist right there between the dark side and the good side, because I'm like, I just sell him like immediately. I'd sell him for food immediately. Like, why would you not sell him for food? There's zero attachment other than 2 minutes of fixing up this character, and I guess she kind of received the message. Little projection message, but I was like, I don't care.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
I'm not okay with not having any connection to Rey at all. I just didn't care about her.
Yep.
And I didn't care about Finn, and I didn't care about who's the.
I don't know. He's another captain, fighter pilot, badass guy.
Yeah. The fighter pilot guy. Like, none of these characters were developed in any way that was interesting.
I think he was supposed to kind of model after
Han Solo.
Correct. But Han Solo has such a long arc. You were introduced to him way early that he was like the cool guy, that just like not care, but got dragged into it to the point where he's really good. I guess he was a smuggler or whatever. But because of everything that happened, now he's invested in becoming a good guy, because he's care about all this people that he got attached to, and he wants to do good because it's ultimately the right thing to do, even though it's inconvenient. But whereas the new pilot,
a story arc where a character starts one way and then through a series of experiences changes.
Right.
None of these characters changed in any way from beginning to end.
Yeah.
That I could tell.
Poe Dameron. That's the.
Poe Dameron.
Yeah, that's the pilot. So yeah, he started out as a cool guy already, fighting for the good guys, and I'm like, how are you gonna where are you gonna go? Like, there's nowhere to go for him other than become cooler and flying better. I'm like, there's no arc here, and I'm just like, I don't care. He's already good. He's got a cool jacket on already. I'm like, you didn't even acquire. Like, there's no. I'm not connected to him at all, like you said, and I'm just like, okay, I'll just watch his movie, but I'm just like,
There was nowhere for him to go, and he didn't go anywhere.
What about Finn? What's your critique of Finn?
Again, it was interesting in the beginning. He was a ex-stormtrooper, so that's an interesting way to take it. A new way. But they didn't really take it anywhere. It had a lot of potential.
Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of cool to see, the desert planet with the Star Destroyers that had crashed on the planet. That was really cool. And it was cool to see the Millennium Falcon again. It was cool to see Han Solo and Princess Leia and Luke again. But if you're going to introduce new characters, they've got to, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think on paper they sort of had a story arc, but not. Rey did, but none of the others did, and I don't know. It just wasn't good, and there were all those unnecessary extra characters. Captain Phasma, Maz Kanata. In the third movie, there was a helmeted woman. That Poe Dameron knew somehow on like a cold planet, but like she was completely unnecessary and not integral to the plot at all.
Yeah. I recently watched the third movie because it was free on Disney Plus, so I kind of complete the loop, and it was cool. But I was like, being exposed to all the other stuff already kind of didn't have that twist for me because
it was trying to wrap up loose ends, or at least it didn't wrap up any loose ends really, but it sort of presented itself as wrapping up loose ends.
I think they broke so many canon rules.
There was no way to salvage it at that point, and good riddance. Enough. I'm done. So I started out as a Star Wars fan, but now I'm just exhausted, and it's fine that they don't make any more movies. It's very disappointing that they took something that was so cool and ruined it. But they did ruin it.
Yeah, I think with the new trilogy, and I think with the prequel, it was all Lucas' faults because he did write and direct all three of them. Correct? Basically, that's what he did. Here in the new project, you can claim that he didn't oversee them, but what they made a mistake was they had two different directors. I'm like, why would you cut out the guy that's gonna write all three movies in the middle movie and put a different tone on it? That's besides everything else.
I think the original idea was to have three different writers for all three movies.
Right, but you want a consistent. So, let's take this whole universe. Take this whole universe compared to the other successor universe, which I'm a big fan of, Marvel Cinematic Universe. A lot of people don't like it, but I like how they do different director for every movie. But what they did is they had an overarching manager, and make sure all the stories kind of just line up, and in a way it's easier because each of them is like a superhero, whereas this is like normal people being put under extraordinary circumstances and rising to meet those challenges, and you never got that sense because Rey was immediately a badass. Poe Dameron is immediately a badass. Like, you did not become a badass at all. Like, you just automatically become a badass. It's like, like, this is not how you do it. But yeah, going to the things I like, and this is like going outside the main, movie line. Did you like Rogue One?
I did.
Yeah.
Although
it's not perfect.
It's not perfect. I didn't find the characters relatable in that. Like, there was no one that was really all that compelling. but I did like the world.
Yes.
And it was dark and realistic, and you got an idea of what it was like to live
Yes.
in the society, as you know. So all that was really cool, and I also loved the ending, how it tied it into the original.
Yeah, I like
Star
the
Wars.
ending. I like how all the characters die,
Mhm.
and that's a little dark for Star Wars because it's kind of PG-13. But it's like, dude, not everyone is a hero, with superpowers. And I think, did anyone? I'm trying to remember. Anyone had an inkling of a Force? Maybe on the original. I guess they cover the planet where all the Jedi's was like the source of their power, and they,
Jeddah.
yeah, of course they blasted it into nothing.
Yeah,
Immediately.
and
I'm just like, no, why would you do that? But okay.
And then there was that blind martial artist who,
Yeah.
I guess he was using the Force, but he didn't have a lightsaber.
And I think that's good because that's the closest thing you have to a non-force wielding person. That's as good as they're gonna get, right? Like that's as good as they get. And I think in the new main movie, where immediately almost everybody have access to the Force, I was like, what is going on? Is this guy Force sensitive too? Like literally, almost they hinted at it. Now is that my wrong interpretation, or did they hint at different people having access almost immediately? With
Not as far as I know. Rey did. Obviously, Luke and Leia did. But who else did that you thought?
So Finn picked up a lightsaber and fought with it a little tiny bit.
But that's not necessarily using the Force.
But he's also immediately badass with it. And when he was just a regular soldier, I'm like, what? But I don't know. It's just like a lot of fan theories that I watch afterwards. And then of course they cut all those in the later movies. It's like just nip that in the bud. What I did like was the action sequences. That was cool. I like, with all this stuff, with the world building, Rogue One did really good. And if you ever not be as angry, you can watch the new series. Oh God, I forgot it now.
The Clone Wars?
No. Oh my God, how did I forget this?
Oh, The Mandalorian?
The Mandalorian.
I've seen a few episodes of that. I haven't watched the whole thing.
Talking about world building, they do an excellent job in that world.
And as a TV show, that works pretty well because the stakes are not as high as a feature length movie, or a trilogy of trilogies.
Correct.
Of feature length movies, where the stakes are naturally a lot higher, and unfortunately, disappointing.
Yeah,
I would say. Well, we're over an hour.
Yeah, we talked a lot about different stuff.
There's a lot more we could talk about.
It's a lot more dislikes than likes, but what are you gonna do? Other than,
and that's largely because the first three movies were so powerful and important, and to degrade them with these two other trilogies, it feels like an impiety was committed. It does feel that way, though.
I don't know what that means, but okay.
It means, there's like it seems sacrilegious. you know?
Yeah, I certainly feel that from the vibes I'm getting from the internet, and people just, very passionately just talk about this topic, which is why we're covering it, because there's a lot of passion behind it. And the question becomes, how do you, I think as a world building, you can do that with TV shows much better because you have the time and you have the ability to bring in different characters that are non-focused on the main storyline, but would matter from episode to episode, and you can do that. Whereas with movies, you can't, and I think they tried to do too much. This is why you
can, but for some reason they don't. They don't want to.
you need good writing, and you need to close the story on all those side characters, which leave me questioning things, and I think that's why the movie doesn't work. Because I don't remember who's the captain that was cool and wear a yellow cloak. They brought him back in the last movie.
Oh, Lando Calrissian.
Right. So in the original, he helped them. Did he help them escape anywhere?
Yeah. So he was the administrator of Bespin, which is this cloud city,
Mm-hmm.
where Han Solo was frozen in carbonite
Okay.
and taken by Boba Fett, and he helped Luke and Leia, and I guess Chewbacca and
Escape.
the droids escape.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you did you watch the runtime of the original 3 to see how long they were compared to, I guess, the prequels and sequels, the new ones?
I did not.
Okay. I don't know how they did it, but it seems like they did more, and they closed the stories and introduced more characters at the same time. Because Lando didn't come in until like the second movie, right? Like the first movie was all Luke. The second movie was Han Solo. Oh no, Han Solo was already in the first movie, right? You knew about him. Okay. But then they went elsewhere, I think. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what the writing was that made it so magical, but at the same time is like satisfying, whereas the new one is not satisfying, and it just
No.
you don't care.
Yeah, and I want to care.
Yeah.
It would not have been hard for them to write a satisfying movie. Because there's this audience there that's so willing to eat up anything they serve. Even after the prequel movies.
Yeah.
Because I think the thought was that these new movies would redeem the series.
Mm-hmm.
Would make up for the bad part. And in retrospect, the prequels were better than these.
No,
Yes,
I think they're
so,
equally bad. You can't. I think the prequels have more annoying characters like Jar Jar Binks that just drove your attention elsewhere.
By the end of the prequels, I was sort of invested in Anakin turning into Darth Vader.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, there were some flaws, and I was invested in Obi-Wan Kenobi, and the Emperor. Like they
got that right. Yeah.
We got to that point, even though there was a lot of stumbles along the way. In the new movies, I didn't care about Rey at the end of her journey.
Yeah, there was no journey. She was badass the entire time.
And I really didn't. I mean, even though Kylo Ren was the most interesting and well-crafted character, I really didn't care all that much about him either.
Yeah, how he turned good again was pretty weak for me because I was like, all right, whatever, sure. I just accepted it, right? Like
he
all
was conflicted the whole time, though.
Yeah,
he was. So he went from being conflicted to picking a side, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. It wasn't, but that's just me trying to make it make sense.
It wasn't tying up to a great, like little bow, and make it neat. So they definitely had a lot of issues with that. But yeah, I think overall it was really good. The one thing
that was really good.
All of the Star Wars stuff. The one thing that I never have critique about is how they do land ships, the pods. I was always fascinated from that standpoint, like the hovercraft, so to speak. I think the original movie, everybody likes all the different CGI, the little tiny video recorder of Leia. That was cool. If you've never been exposed to it before, but with all the modern CGI, you're like, okay. What got me is all the chasing sequences where they do pot chase through the forest, for example.
Oh yeah, that was cool.
Because even if with the exposure of modern CGI, I thought, I was like, okay, that took me by surprise. I kind of don't understand how they do it, and then even in the modern ones, I still find it very, very compelling. how they jump off and on these floating devices, and but they never take them off world. It's always on land. It's just like so that is cool to me. I like that.
And there's no wheels for the most part.
No, it's all hovercraft.
Things either float or they have legs.
Yes, when they land, they just put out all these legs to land. I'm like, you don't need legs if you can just,
But the Imperial walkers,
Yeah.
they were legged. Well, what do you think? Should we?
Yeah, I think this is good.
Should we wrap this up?
We can wrap this up for this episode. I'll do an outro sequence later and call it. But yeah, that'll be good. Episode 2, Star Wars.
All right.
All right. See everyone.
Until next time.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Hey, this is Thang here with the EpicMetaPodcast team. Thank you so much for listening. Did you listen to the whole episode? Did you enjoy it? Were there things that we missed? Were there topics you would like for us to dive deeper into? And of course, what other topics should we discuss in the future? If you have any of these thoughts or comments, please share with us what you think and how you feel regarding the current episode, and of course, other ideas that you might have for future episodes below. As always, thank you so much for listening, and until next time, be good and be well.